Good afternoon. You were listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. My name is Danny Krasik, and I'm here with a very special guest to talk about a very special project. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Alex Herz. I'm a filmmaker based in LA, and my project is a short film called My Girlfriend Turned Into a Worm, based off of my viral internet series.
So, how did you get started in storytelling and film projects and creating series and all that fun creative stuff?
Oh gosh, well, you mean like my whole history of
Yeah.
doing movies? Oh man. It's funny. I actually don't remember when I first got interested in it. Like I said, I'm originally from the Bay Area, so like didn't grow up in a like entertainment heavy community or anything like that. Neither of my parents are big movie watchers. Earliest memory I do have is I was around five and I saw a commercial for a kid-friendly camcorder called the Digital Blue, which I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it was basically like a camera, a DVR camera, or like I think he used an SD card that was marketed to like kids. And I saw a commercial for it and pointed it out to my mom. And I said, that's what I was talking about. That's what I want for Hanukkah. And so I clearly had seen it before and expressed interest. And that to me is like the very first moment that this all started because I got that for the holidays and then just started making all sorts of crazy movies with my friends. And from then on, I kind of just was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a filmmaker. I'm going to make movies. And um, I think that sort of like ignorance about what it actually took was probably good because I might have given up had I known how difficult things were going to be and how difficult they are for everybody who wants to do this. But yeah, I mean, started doing that, made YouTube videos with my friends all throughout middle school, started making my first scripted short films when I was in high school. Went to Northwestern for film school. While I was there, my freshman year, I wrote and directed and produced my first very low budget feature film called A Normal Life, which is based off of my relationship with my younger brother who has Down syndrome and my experience leaving him to attend Northwestern and kind of worrying about his independence. And that got into some cool festivals like Heartland in Indianapolis and got a small distribution deal for those interested in checking it out. I believe it's currently available on Apple TV Plus, which is pretty cool. And yes, and then I graduated from Northwestern, moved out to LA, did a spec TV pilot, making more short films, and then COVID hit and didn't really make anything for a couple of years. And when I got back into things, I started to think like this is, like trying to think of the best way to phrase this. I think I, after COVID, started to realize that I was feeling a little distanced from that kid who had the digital blue when he was 5 years old or who was making YouTube videos with his friends. I feel like I hadn't really been able to do anything hands on for a long time. And so that's what sort of transitioned over to like making a lot more internet based content because I started to think like I can just make this stuff at scale and make it high quality, but I don't have to worry about budget or like hiring actors or anything like that. And after about a year of doing this, I woke up one morning and was like, what if, what if my girlfriend turned into a worm? Thinking about the internet meme, would you still love me if I was a worm? And made my first video, went out to Petco, bought some worms, came home and uh, put the worm in a tiny chair and shot it and really didn't think anything would happen. And then I believe I went in to watch a movie with some of my friends and came out of the movie and the video had like 200,000 plays already. And I was like, holy cow. So that was kind of the start of everything from the
Yeah.
inception of my career to worms.
Yeah, I had to explain the meme to several people when I was telling them like that I was
Mm,
doing this interview. I had to re-explain what that was. They were like, "What do you mean the girlfriend turned?" So obviously the series did, blew up and you've done several of them and they're all, super successful, several million plays on each of them. Like how was there after they started blowing up, what did anything change in your style of how you were creating or in your
mm,
creative voice after you started becoming successful? With that series specifically, obviously you've done other film work, but with
yeah.
that series specifically, how did that change your outlook on creating and your development and everything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of the actual style of the videos, I wouldn't say too much has changed. Like I said, when I kind of woke up that random Sunday morning and had the idea for the series in whole, I I had like 20 or 30 ideas for possible videos I could have done, but I decided to only make one or two in the event that they were just a total flop and it would have been a waste of my time. But from the very inception, it was this notion. I was like, okay, these have to be very high quality. I'm going to shoot them on my cinema camera, probably unnecessarily, but it's what I want to do. And they have to feel very intimate and kind of like have ASMR vibes and also be funny, but have this tinge of melancholy that I love so much. And yeah, I think if anything, what's evolved over time is I realized pretty quickly, since I'm not recording natural sound when I'm shooting these videos, I realized like in order to make these feel the way I want them to feel, I'm going to have to create my own like sonic landscape. And so I've been amassing this pretty huge sound effect and sound design library specifically for this series. I think I have over like 200 different sound effects and like room tones and ambient noises and stuff like that. Um, and so that's been evolving. And I think if anything else, like just the seeing the reaction to some of the early videos and seeing how viral they've gone, it's in a way it's almost like allowed me to put more of my time and energy into these projects. It's allowed me to be like, okay, I can spend the extra time and effort and even money in some cases, like building these really intricate miniatures,
Mhm.
and increasing the production value. I mean, you'll see like from the very beginning to now, like the amount of miniatures I include in these videos is kind of nuts. I that's the other thing too. I never would have considered myself a miniatures guy, and like now I have like a whole box full of them in my closet just out of necessity. Um, so yeah, I think it's more like the evolution has been about becoming more dedicated to the craft of the videos and trying to make them as good as they can possibly be.
Mhm. What about as a storyteller? Not
Mm,
just from, like a production level, but from like a storytelling aspect.
that's a good
Has your
question.
process changed at all?
You know, it's interesting because this is like I keep telling people this, and I feel like it for some people it raises a bit of a red flag, but I keep saying like this is kind of what I've always wanted to do.
Turn
And
people
they're like make videos about worms, and I'm like, no, it's for me like I'm very deeply in love with movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or Her, the Spike Jonze film, where um, not only are these specifically stories about romance and romantic relationships, but they're like about something, but then they're also not about it at the same time. They use elements of genre to like explore things that you like and get to places you probably wouldn't be able to get to if it was just a story set in our world.
Mhm.
And so I think like making these videos, like this is kind of the first time I've really delved deeply into a series or like a theme that um, isn't set in the modern era or isn't set in the real world and includes elements of like fantasy or magical realism. And as a storyteller, I feel like that's really opened up this world of allowing me to just kind of be like, I can kind of do whatever I want in this space, and that's okay. And I can experiment and I can, I can take my worm to a tiny coffee shop or I can put my worm in a tiny car and send it on vacation. And, you know, most recently or pretty recently, I can make a hot air balloon for my worm out of balloons I bought from the store and send it up into the sky so I can get a worm's eye view of Los Angeles. Like I feel like it's enabled me to have a lot more freedom and has really just kind of like unlocked the creativity vault. And I kind of just feel like whatever it is I decide to do for this series, it kind of works as long as it's in miniature and as long as it has this baseline of me being a caretaker and doing an act of service for the worm in some regard, not putting it in danger or anything like that.
The active service for the worm. I love that. So you're turning it into a full film now. You're turning it into
Mhm.
a much bigger project. Was that always something in the back of your mind that you were considering doing with the series? Like once it started
You
rolling.
know, it's interesting. I would say from the very beginning, no. I think for me, it was just about the idea and thinking about the meme, which you still love me if I was a worm, thinking about what that meant. And I think the more I engaged with these videos, the more I realized there was this whole like wealth of untapped thematic richness, I guess, that the this idea kind of contains. And um yeah, I think it was probably around, so I started this in June of 2024, and it was probably around September when I started to think, this might actually work as a feature film. I'm not exactly sure how, but I think it could. And I started to outline a draft, and basically over the course of the next 6 months, like fleshed it out into a whole feature. And I would say like definitely uh like if the short films, like if a comp for the short films is something like Marcel the Shell, where it's this very contained environment, very much focused on the character and their miniature world.
Mhm.
The feature is more like The Lobster or Eternal Sunshine, where it's
Interesting.
yeah, it's centered on it's more of like a Charlie Kaufman type movie. It's
Mhm.
centered on the the boyfriend whose girlfriend has turned into a worm, and kind of follows his journey as he creates this like giant utopia for him in his apartment, in order for her to still feel like loved and like a person. But really, it's kind of a metaphor for him processing his grief and going through this process of like needing to let go and move on. And yeah, I think like in doing this series, like it's so funny to say this. Like I didn't realize this earlier on, but the more and more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think this whole thing is really just a metaphor for caretaking. And I mean, again, that sounds so obvious because that's kind of what the meme is about. But like, I was like, you know what? It's kind of the perfect metaphor for if your partner, like, for example, struggles with severe mental illness or even has a terminal illness or something like that. It's really about like, how would you love your partner? How would you show up for your partner if they couldn't love you back in the same way and they couldn't provide you with the same level of like love and support that they normally do? And coming from this caretaking background, growing up with a younger brother with Down syndrome, I think that like that being situated as a caretaker is something I'm very comfortable with, and is something that's shown up in a lot of my romantic and even personal relationships in my adult life. And so I don't know, kind of like thinking about all that, combining all that, I started to realize like there's a lot more here that I could explore and I could think about. And so um, ultimately, yeah, that's sort of what the feature has ended up becoming. And I'm very excited to continue working on
Yeah.
it.
Now, obviously, it's very, very early in the process. I mean, we're still crowdfunding and everything like that. But what are the long-term plans for the project once you're done shooting?
Yeah, so right now we're crowdfunding for the short film. We're crowdfunding for the short film version of the feature, which is essentially just a few scenes from it that we're going to use as a proof of concept, but also as kind of its own contained story as well. And then the goal there is to, like I said, use that as a proof of concept to pitch for the full feature film version. I mean, obviously, I have all these samples with the series I've already created, but I think having a more tangible short, like 10 to 12-minute short film, I think is a great intermediary point that will allow people to actually see what the full vision might potentially look like in the future. And so the goal here is to make this short. I may have mentioned previously, but earlier this year, my sister and I co-produced a independent pilot called R&R that was at South by Southwest in the independent TV pilot section, and competed there. And while we were there, we met a variety of really great people, including one of our co-producers, Nicole Payson, whose pilot won the jury award at South by. A few actors, David Brown and Matt Wright, who we also met while we were at the festival, who I sort of immediately sort of like clicked with and decided like I think these people would be a real asset for this project, and I think they would contribute in a way that I would really like to collaborate with them on. And yeah, and so like it kind of became like the idea sort of started to become like, okay, if we can kind of like package these people from South by and make a project like
Mhm.
specifically catered to the festival, like we could potentially get back in again and then like use that as a sort of launching pad to start pitching the short film. Obviously, there are no guarantees, but
Yeah.
it'd be great to be able to get back there.
Yeah. And speaking of South by Southwest, I mean, you've done that. You've had your work's been covered by, publications like Vulture. You've gotten into Oscar qualifying film festivals. Like what is a favorite achievement of yours that you've gotten so far, and what's something that's still on the list?
Oh man, favorite achievement. Well, I guess it depends what you mean by achievement. Like if it is in
Of
terms
the
of
of
like
the
an
milestones you've hit so far, what's one that you're like, yeah, this is what I should be doing with my life kind of thing, you know?
oh, really good question.
A
Um,
good one, I know.
there's a couple. I won't belabor it, but I do think that I got into my first film festival when I was 11, and it was a local film festival at a theater called the Lark Theater in Larkspur, California. And my film was a narrative short that was it was I starred in it, and it was about a kid who goes into the future and sees that we've destroyed the world, the ecosystem of the world, and then decides to like get really into like recycling and stuff. And I submitted it to the like green theme section of the festival, and I won. Now, granted, there was only two films in this, and one of them was a school project, and the other was mine. But I won, and it was really exhilarating, and I got to go up on stage and thank everybody. And I kind of remember thinking like, wow, like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like obviously not just collect accolades, but like be in this environment, like make films and be recognized for them and talk about them, and maybe even have people clap for me. That would be cool. Um, I'm trying to think about what else. I think like smaller things, like the level of like satisfaction I felt the morning I woke up after I finished shooting my first feature, of just like I just did that and it's done, and now I just get to go and sit and edit it for as long as I want. Like that's kind of an unparalleled feeling. Anytime I complete a project, it's really like incredibly satisfactory and really exciting. But I'm trying to give you a better answer. Let me think. Um, hmm. This is like a small one, but I feel like might be good for the radio program. Um, Related to the worm stuff, early on, you can Instagram does a thing where it shows you when verified people either like or comment or share one of your videos. And so like every so often I'll just go in and check and be like, which, verified people are looking at my work. That's cool. And for the most part, it's like, people either pay for verification or whatever. But a couple months into the project, I saw randomly one afternoon that SZA had liked one of my reels.
Really?
And I was like, yeah, it was like I didn't really even know how to react. I mean, she didn't share it or anything, but I was like, oh my gosh, SZA saw this and liked it. Like, that's incredible. And it was this incredible feeling of like validation. Like, I don't want to say like I made it, but it made me realize like, oh, these are out there and getting viewership in a way that like none of my other work has. And that was a pretty exciting
Mhm.
feat, I would say,
That's
as
awesome.
small as that is.
No, that's very cool. That's very cool. So less focusing less on your specific work, but just filmmaking in general. What do you view as the most important part of the process?
Oh gosh. Mm,
No, we're given the heavy handers for the
no,
back.
these are good, dude. These are good questions. I'm trying to think, like, you mean just of like the entire filmmaking process?
Any part of the filmmaking process, what do you think is the most important thing, most important aspect?
I I will maintain that far and away editing is the most important part of the filmmaking process. And I'm saying that as a biased editor who edits all of his own projects and
That's
also
the right
works.
answer.
Yeah, I work in post production, but I like you know, I've been editing my own projects since I was 5, because when you're little and making movies, like no one's going to do that for you. You kind of have to teach yourself. And I was like going on YouTube and figuring out how to use like, I guess at that point it was Final Cut 7, and then eventually like Premiere and Adobe After Effects and all these softwares that would allow me to actually like realize my vision. Because the reality is like you can write something and it exists on paper, and then you can shoot something and it exists in a bunch of clips on a hard drive, but then the real movie doesn't actually exist until you put it together on a Premiere timeline or a Avid timeline. And uh, that process for me specifically has always been the most fun and the most rewarding, because I actually feel like I'm sitting with my work and fully realizing what it is I want to realize, and seeing the thing like come to life in front of me is just like an exhilarating thing. But aside from that personal opinion, I really do believe that that's the most important part of the process. I mean, editors do not get nearly enough credit for the work that they do, and the reality is, it's like if you don't have a good editor, like your whole thing just falls apart. Like film is a um, it's a medium that relies heavily on the way things are constructed, and pacing and tension and all that is created specifically through the editing process. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the right answer. So, continuing to speak broadly, if you could give one piece of advice to people who are trying to get into a position where they can pursue their passion projects and they can break into the film industry, as cliche as that sounds, what is a piece of
Yeah, yeah.
or one that you wish you'd gotten earlier on?
I'll share a piece of advice that I got and then I ignored a bunch. And I wish I hadn't ignored it, which is not only like make your own stuff, which I've been doing from an early age, as I mentioned, but put it out there as much as you possibly can. I think I saw this TikTok video once that really resonated with me, where the guy was basically like, just a reminder that um, nobody knows what you're doing unless you're talking about it. And I was like, wait a minute, that's 100% true. Nobody has any clue what I'm doing unless I'm talking about it. I feel like from an early age, I would make these projects and I'd spend so much time and effort creating them and making them the best they could be. And then I would just sort of submit them to festivals and just kind of sit on them. And I was adopting this mindset that ultimately I would get to a place where my work will just speak for itself. And I think that's the goal of any artist, that your work just speaks for itself. You don't have to explain it, you have to talk about it. But the reality is, the marketing of your work and the way you talk about it is actually as important as the work itself, especially in this day and age. And early on, I've been with my current girlfriend for 9 years, and very early on, I remember her being on me about increasing my Instagram presence and just being like, look, like you need to have more of a viewership. It will actually give you a lot more leeway to create the things that you want than you think. And I was sort of like, it just seems like a lot of work. Like, I don't really want to do that. And for years, I sort of pushed back against that. And truly, like, it wasn't until I decided to just embrace that and make, like, just put out random TikTok videos and put out these worm videos on Reels. Like, that's when things actually started to change for me. And now, like, doors have opened that never existed before. And I'm not saying people need to make those kinds of videos, like, make short films and put them on YouTube, but like, figure out a way to actually talk about what you're doing with frequency and with consistency. Um, and I don't want to say something annoying like create a brand or anything like that. Like, I think that's like nebulous and doesn't really mean anything, but I do think it's really important to show people constantly like, hey, I'm out here, I'm working. And the reality is, like, most people are so online all the time that like their perception of you is pretty much entirely dictated by like Instagram, and to a certain extent YouTube as well. So you have a lot of power to decide how you're going to show up professionally and how people are going to view you. And I know there's like a filmmaker out there, a young filmmaker listening to me, just like rolling their eyes, being like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to post on my Instagram. And like, yeah, you might do it for a while and it might look a little cringy or it might feel a little cringy. But trust me, if you do it with consistency and you're putting your best foot forward, not being a perfectionist about it, but you're putting your best foot forward and you're trying to do the things you actually want to do, at a certain point, it will pay off in a way that you never expected. And that's exactly what happened for me.
Great. So obviously not just the crowdfunding, but if people are interested in seeing more about that or seeing more of your other work, where can they go?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, alexherz.com. A lot of my films or trailers for my films are posted there. If you'd like to learn more about the short film My Girlfriend Turned Into a Worm, there's actually a lot of information on our Seed and Spark page. Um, I think you can just Google that. If you Google My Girlfriend Turned Into a Worm, the
Hmm.
info will show up somewhere. Um, other than that, I'll be playing. I have a short documentary that will be premiering at the Indie Shorts Film Festival in Indianapolis later this July. If you happen to be in Indianapolis and you like documentaries, come check that out as well. And you can see me on Instagram at Alex Herz. That's where a lot of the worm videos live.
Great. And then we ask this question of everyone that comes on the show. Was it either your favorite movie or what is a movie that deeply inspired your work and why?
Don't do this to me, Daniel. Um, I'm trying to think. A movie that I consistently revisit and think about and frankly like has no business having as much of an impact on my life as it has is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the Celine Sciamma film from 2019. Again, a very recent movie that feels like it's just been out and around forever and was one of those movies that like the first time I saw it within minutes, I was like, this is an all-timer for me. Like I'm gonna watch this for the rest of my life. Um, Something about the way Celine Sciamma in general, but specifically in this film, is able to communicate so much by doing so little,
Mm.
I think is like I think every filmmaker should aspire to making a film like that.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping by on the show. Best of luck with the fundraising and best of luck with the documentary. And yeah, thank you for stopping by.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it.